Okay, it's spreading yellow time around here. Urban Phenom, B-double-E, Cash Simmons.
You know who
We
it
is
is.
for the
We
town
rebel
right
made
here.
Cash Simmons,
Come
your
on,
boy. I hold it down for the city that I'm at. That's Kansas City, boy, in the middle of the map, yeah. And I'm KC stunting. Welcome to the town, homie. You don't want nothing, no. And if you cut me, I would probably bleed.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, addicts, depending on what time of the day that you are tuned in to AA Radio. That's right, we are back. We decided to take our bye week 1 week earlier than the Chiefs did, but we are back this week with more on Chiefs football, everything that you want, everything that you need, that you crave from AA Radio. I am Jason Seibel, assistant editor at arrowheadaddict.com, the sole source, should be the only source you need for all your Chiefs needs. And with me tonight, I've got returning, as always, kind of my right-hand man, if you will, from the Pacific Northwest up in Seattle country. It's my man Chris Kilduff. What's up, Chris?
Hey, man, Seattle country. You haven't left here too long. We're all sorts of ways away from Seattle. We're like Idaho country, pretty much.
Well, I mean, Seahawk country is what I was getting at.
Seahawk country.
Who I would like to see the Chiefs play in the Super Bowl. We'll get there in a second. So you doing good, brother? You cold up there? Is it snowing yet?
Yeah, we actually got about 3 inches yesterday. So, but it all melted off, and it's back to at least semi-livable, kind of weather now instead of that frozen tundra.
Well, there you go. Good to hear. Also with me tonight, one of our newer members at Arrowhead Addict, as far as a writer goes, one of the newer guys on board there, and the newest from showing up here on AA Radio. This will be his first appearance. Kenny Sember. What's up, Kenny?
Nothing much. Just we're in New York here, so when people ask you what football team you like in New York, and you tell them the Chiefs, well, their reaction is always a good one.
But this year, you've got that one up, because any other year against the Giants, you'd have to eat a little bit of crow. But this year, 31-7, and you can tell them to stuff it. So
it was great. Watched it with my friends at college, and I went up last weekend for Halloween. I wore my Eric Berry jersey, and some guy just gave me. I got a bunch of people gave me a pat on the back, and they're like, "Yeah, good for you wearing that jersey, man." And I was like, it was a great feeling for once,
That's good, man. That's good. Well, glad to have you on AA Radio this week. Like I said, took our bye a little early. We didn't have a show last week, so jumping right into things real quick. Take you back 2 weeks. Want to kind of talk about the Browns game real quick, and quickly just kind of recap that one as we move into what happened this past Sunday, before we kind of look ahead and what's going on. So Browns-Chiefs, the Chiefs' final game in their 3-game homestand. Obviously, Chiefs coming out with a win against a defense that's been tougher than they thought, and an offense, I think, that performed a little bit better than they thought. Chiefs obviously getting the win on that one by a score of 17-23 Chiefs, and but a little bit of a scare there with Campbell coming out, chucking the rock around. Smith having a good performance, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns, and of course 293 and 2 touchdowns for the former Raider, former Redskin, former Bear, Jason Campbell. What were your guys' thoughts on that? Kenny, what'd you think up there in New York?
To tell you the truth, I was actually on the way home for the first half visiting my sister, so thankfully I have, this is going to sound like an advertisement, but I have Verizon, so I was able to stream the game for free on my phone, which was really great. But the game itself was, anything but great. It was nerve-wracking the entire game. At least for the first half, I know they were up. I don't know what I'm saying. I think of the Bills game, because that's where I was this weekend. But the Browns game, man, the first half was great. They had a lot of opportunities in the first half. They pretty much dominated, but they only managed to score 13 points. And I got home just as the half ended, and they went into halftime 20-10, and they made Jason Campbell, who hadn't made an NFL start in 3 years, look like a complete all-star. So it was really, especially with the reputation that we stake on our defense, it was very, very, very difficult to listen to the game and to deal with all the flack we got afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Browns are always tough, and Chris, you and I kind of were texting throughout the game on that one, and you had some not quite nice things to say about the defense and some expletives that we'll leave out, but essentially saying where the heck are they? So, what were your thoughts, real quick, on that Browns game?
Well, it's kind of interesting because that previous week when we did the show, you kind of used the term "tale of two halves," and that's really what this game was. Again, at the start of that game, the Chiefs looked phenomenal. The Browns had no first downs until there was a minute left of the first half. So I mean, we completely shut them down, and it was just domination by our defense. And then as it got to the end of the second half, or the end of the second quarter and into the second half, there was really nothing. We just completely shut off. So it was really frustrating on my end watching it, knowing that we play as good as we do. And then I was really confused too when we were going into how we were going to match up against the Browns. Me and you had both agreed that we thought we were going to get a lot of pressure on Jason Campbell, and that just was non-existent. We had just one sack that entire game.
Yeah. And that's kind of a good point to make as we look even into this week against the Bills. Where the hell has our pass rush gone?
Yeah, it's crazy because we've just had such a dominant pass rush, and then we had one sack, I believe, last game, then no sacks against the Bills. So that's one thing that I definitely had been worried about.
Yeah, I mean, the defense is still doing what the defense does, and just my kind of quick take on that Browns game. I liked what the offense was doing in the first half, and unfortunately, where we've seen kind of before, the offense has started slow in the first half and then kind of gotten it going in the second half. This one was kind of a flip again, going back to that tale of two halves, which has kind of defined quite a few Chiefs games this season. But that tale of two halves where you've got the offense kind of firing on all cylinders. You got the offense firing on all cylinders, in the first half, and Smith is hitting, his receivers hitting McCluster for that beautiful touchdown, the nice long drive capped off with the Sherman touchdown, and then in the second half they're stalling out and they're kicking field goals. So it's a win. That one brings the Chiefs to 8-0, guaranteeing them a non-losing season. And then, of course, this past Sunday, Chiefs traveled to Buffalo, to Orchard Park, New York, to face the Buffalo Bills, who, despite their record, despite what anyone may think about them as a team, despite how well they're playing, despite the fact that they've got an undrafted rookie free agent, quarterback, whatever, the Chiefs always struggle with the Bills. In fact, the one time that we've beaten them in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years was off of a Ryan Suckup as time expired in overtime in Kansas City, which was a couple years ago. And I was actually here in San Antonio, not living here. I was here on business and watching it in a little bar down on the Riverwalk. But Chiefs hadn't won in Buffalo since 1987. Kenny, how old were you in 1987?
Wasn't born yet. My parents weren't even married. My parents got married in '89. So
oh my God, do I feel old? So there you go, addicts. A member of our panel here, not even born the last time that the Chiefs won in Buffalo. I mean that's a hell of a lot of history that you're having to overcome. So to go in there and fight it out tooth and nail. And one thing that's kind of been said is the Buffalo fans are a lot like Chiefs fans. Even the bad seasons that Buffalo's kind of managed to stack one after another. There was still a lot of blue in those stands. So Kenny, go ahead and what was your take on the game Sunday?
Yeah, this game had special meaning for me because I went to college in Western New York, and a lot of my friends are Bills fans. One in particular is a guy I like to talk football with, and he's always been a big, supporter of the Chiefs, and we like to watch football together, except when this happens. And, in 2010, obviously, we had the suck-up field goal. 2011, we had the Stevie Johnson low block, 41-7 at home, which was one of the worst days of my life. And then last year, I was actually at the game, and me, my dad, and my cousin left in the third quarter, and I got so sick of that touchdown dance, I promised myself I'd never set foot in that stadium again. But I mean, this game, man, it's another one of those things. I went up to school, and once again, I was listening to it on the way home. First on the Bills radio station, and those guys are terrible announcers. They're the worst homers I've ever listened to. But focusing on the game, I mean, it was just a struggle. It really just seemed like for the offense, it was just a struggle, back and forth, and eventually, Toole hit Goodwin, who's one of the fastest guys this year, if not the fastest guy at the combine, just blazed past Kendrick Lewis and Marcus Cooper for a touchdown. And, the Chiefs answered with a, okay drive, and they kicked the field goal. And it seemed to go back and forth like that until, the Chiefs defense finally made the plays they had to make. The interception return for a touchdown, and, the Marcus Cooper, who's just been unbelievable for the Chiefs, stripping the ball from T.J. Graham, Tamba Hali scooping it up and running into the end zone, and essentially that's sealing the game. But really, man, my friend texted me, and he's like, wow, I gave the Chiefs more credit. This offense is terrible. And it was just really, really difficult to listen to. Something's got to improve before Denver.
Oh, and I don't disagree with you, Chris. What you look like you were ready to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously on the same page. I thought, Buffalo, like we said, I mean, not only are they tough against us, they're tough in general. They're one of those teams that people really look over. They have big wins. Carolina, who's all of a sudden really looking good. They won Carolina. Super Bowl champion Ravens. They won the Ravens. They've won Miami, who's really given everybody a tough time this year. So, I mean, they have big wins, that we're competing against. They're not some little football team, but it really, if anything, frustrates me, and it seems like anything is a continuance of our last year nuances of being a bad football team, is we cannot stop the long ball. And it's been time and time again. I mean, I haven't done any of the research on it yet, but I really want to go back and look at every touchdown scored on us this year and see how many were over 30-yard touchdowns. It has to be at least half to three-fourths of the points scored against us. Every single time I see a touchdown, it's this deep 50-yard touchdown pass. And so, that's been really frustrating. But I think we did some things good. I mean, I was really upset last week when I saw Bo was 8th in receiving for our, team, and then they came back for the Bills game and got, 67 yards. So, I mean, at least we were kind of getting him the ball. We missed that longer ball to Dex. The Dex just kind of dropped out in the middle of nowhere. But, defense, once again, getting it done,
Well, it's funny, and I just pulled this up as you were talking, Chris, and I hadn't really looked at this stat. If you look at the Bills' schedule, the first 9 games that they have played, take out the game against the Chiefs, they lost by 10. Take out the game against the Saints last week that they lost by 18. Every single one of their game, I'm sorry, take out the game against the Browns that they lost by 13. The rest of their games, so take out 3 of those losses, the rest of their losses have been decided by 7 points or less. Patriots 23, Bills 21. Then they won by 1 against the Panthers. The next week, they lose by 7 to the Jets. The next week, they win by 3 against the Ravens. Then they lose by 13 to the Browns. They lose by 3 to the Bengals. They win against the Dolphins by 2, and then they lose to the Saints by 18 and the Chiefs by 10. But this game last week against the Chiefs, and I guess my point there is that they're a much better team than their record would say they are. I mean, you can say that about a lot of teams. Wins and losses only count as wins and losses, and I've been screaming this to anybody that'll listen. There's no asterisk next to a win or a loss. It says it was a 1-point loss or a 50-point loss or a win. a win is a win is a win is a win, which is why when people say that the Chiefs are the worst 9-0 team, I mean, it's garbage because they're 9-0. I don't care how many games that the teams that they played against have won and lost. I mean, look at the Bills' schedule right there. People would say, yeah, the Bills have only won 3 games this season. Yeah, but a field goal or a special teams play or a pick six changes the entire complexion of that game. So, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, as far as the offense, it was frustrating to watch. Getting beat on that deep ball. That's just the name of the game with this Bob Sutton defense. I mean, that is what this defense is willing to give up, and you can really kind of point the finger at one guy on that deep ball, and that was Kendrick Lewis, and he kind of made up for it a couple series later when he makes that interception. But he took a horrible angle, and Cooper, who was providing coverage on that play, really kind of played him soft because he thought that he was going to have Lewis over the top if you go back and watch the tape, and Lewis just takes it bad. But that dude's an Olympian. I mean, I'm okay getting beat on a long ball by a guy that's an Olympian. I mean, he was an Olympic track star, so...
Well, here's the deal, Jason, and you're saying, that's kind of the thing with the Sutton defense, that they're willing to give that up to play this aggressive style defense, and I'm fine with that. I really am. If you're going to beat us on the long ball and beat us on the long ball, hey, that's your game. But we can't give that up if our awesome Bob Sutton defense isn't in turn getting the pressure that we're talking about putting on people. If we don't have what we did these last 2 games and then still getting beaten deep, that's going to kill us.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And Kenny, feel free to kind of jump in here on this because like you look like you were ready to jump in. But no, I'm with you. I mean, you can't get burned for a 59-yard touchdown and end the game with 0 sacks because the whole point is you got to have you're giving up one to get the other.
I was going on what Chris said about everything being deep. I mean, you look at obviously Jacksonville didn't score, but if you go into the Dallas game, a bunch of long balls to Dez, the bomb to Victor Cruz, the flea flicker to Josh Gordon, C.J. Spiller's 61-yard run, and then the run defense is something that is altogether a problem, which is what I wrote in my most recent piece for the site. But I mean, it's just I'm okay with that as well. But the issue is and the Bills' offensive line is, I think, very sneakily underrated. But you look at what they've done, and obviously last week, Joe Thomas was on the left side, and he essentially completely neutralized Tamba Hali. But there's no excuse for, Poe was kind of fallen off after the past, the first couple of games in terms of the pass rush, getting to the quarterback specifically. And Justin Houston also. The team has just fallen off in general. I mean, the 10 sacks against the Raiders, but then again, you also have to remember that the Raiders had a bunch of injuries. So we'll see. And going back to this deep ball dilemma, and this is something that you can't let happen. I mean, last year, the Chiefs lost in Kansas City because they got beat deep by Eric Decker on a Tim Tebow deep ball. How do you think this defense is going to react to a quarterback that's throwing, the deep ball? We got Julius Thomas to deal with. We got Wes Welker to deal with. We got Demaryius Thomas to deal with. We got Eric Decker to deal with again. I mean, these guys are completely different. I mean, and I'm not sneezing on Josh Gordon, Greg Little, Victor Cruz, Dez Bryant, who's one of the best in football. But this is a collection of excellent receivers on one team. And if you're weak against the deep ball against one of the best quarterbacks of all time, in a hostile environment, where the air is thin, where it's easier for him to throw that ball farther, it's going to be a lot bigger of a problem if those guys can't get to the quarterback.
No, and I'm going to give you that, but I'm going to tell you and everybody listening the second thing that I've been shouting from the rooftops. And when I say they, I'm talking John Dorsey, Andy Reid, and all of his crew of coaches. They built this defense to beat Denver. And they had the pieces without even knowing they had the pieces. And I say that because they bring in Dunta Robinson, and thinking that he's going to be that missing that nickel back or that dime back. And then all of a sudden Marcus Cooper has his big emergence. I am not nearly as worried about the receiving touchdowns of Peyton Manning. I'm more worried about Manning making the adjustments to the defense and forcing Manning to make those adjustments than I am about just getting outright beat by Manning in his deep ball. Because I think you line up Cooper on Decker, you line up Smith on Demaryius Thomas, you put Eric Berry on Julius Thomas, and then you put Brandon Flowers in the slot against Wes Welker, and you've got a recipe to beat Peyton Manning.
But can we talk about, though, because that's something that I've had an issue with, is this year seems to have been Brandon Flowers has just looked miserable this year, and he's looked so bad that he has been essentially demoted to playing in the slot. And am I happy that we have the depth to put in there? Sure. But at the same time, this is a guy who we consider to be one of the best corners in football, and we can't say that this year.
I'm not gonna. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I don't consider being put in the slot as a demotion, and I don't think that anyone else should either. I don't consider it demoting Dwayne Bowe when we run packages where we run Dwayne Bowe on the offense out of the slot either. Chris, I mean, you got something a take on this, Chris?
Well, I mean, I could see where Kenny's coming from a little bit. Old NFL, you might say that that's a bit of a demotion, but with a lot of these newer offenses where you're moving receivers around, and I mean, a lot of you used to have, your number one receiver and your number two receiver on the outside, and then you have a slot receiver, and that just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, especially with people, running these different sets, putting people in different places. I think you just got to kind of match up where people match up, play a lot of man defense, let our guys shine, I think that's where we need to go with that, hopefully.
Well, hang on, Kenny, and I'll jump back over to you here in just a second, but I was just going to kind of add to that point that I was making earlier and kind of add to what Chris said, the Denver Broncos, and we'll finish this up and then move into our next piece here, but the Denver Broncos, I consider Wes Welker to be their number one receiver. He's the best guy catching the ball. I mean, they have a cast of receivers that can catch the ball and run with the ball well, but I think that Wes Welker is the most talented one of the bunch, and they've got him running out of the slot. So why not put Flowers on that guy, knowing what Flowers can do?
And I think at that point, and like I said, like you said, we need to move on. I'm sorry, like you said, we need to move on. But my final thoughts are that. And I think that matchup works well in Denver because, Sean Smith and Marcus Cooper are the bigger guys, and they're on the bigger guys. They're going to be on Decker and Thomas. And Welker's the little guy, and so is Flowers. So I think that, that, and you'll have EB on Julius Thomas, and, hopefully, clearly he's improved against the tight ends this year. Hopefully, those matchups will play in Kansas City's favor.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, this is a conversation we're going to continue next week.
Absolutely.
Once we're that in the show right before that Denver game, and we're really talking Denver. And we'll definitely dive way more in depth on this. We kind of derailed the train a little bit, but I mean, it's a good conversation to have because it's really valid. But it actually works well into our next segment here, which. I kind of sent it out to you guys earlier today, and I want to look at doing, it's mid-season per se. The Chiefs are getting their bye, just one game after their mid-season, 9 games in, and so I'd like to kind of go around the horn here and do grades, for the position group. So, Chris, I'll shoot it over to you first. How are you grading the offense for the 9-0 Chiefs after 9 games going into their bye?
Well, it's a bit tricky because it matters what offense shows up, I mean, we've had a couple weeks where we've looked, I would say, decent enough, but I think overall you can't give us a high score. I have us listed as a D for offense. I think we do a lot of stalling, really inconsistent. Andy Reid's been really conservative with the long ball, and that might be catering to Alex Smith's style, a little bit. But I think when we've taken shots with the long ball, outside of the miss last week to Dexter McCluster, we've had relatively good luck with it. So I mean, I think we need to at least kind of go a little bit deep every once in a while and bring that up. But, if you're putting it on an actual grading scale and you say, okay, C is average, I consider the Chiefs' offense below average, so I have a D.
Okay, Kenny, what do you got?
I want to go with a C, and I'm going to take a statistical viewpoint from this. And I think that the Chiefs seem to be literally at the halfway mark, and this C being average. So I'm going to go with a C because the Chiefs, they're scoring 23.9 points a game, which is a vast improvement from last year. But they don't turn the ball over, and that's the big deal. Yeah, they're one of the worst in football in passing. Only 100, less than 200 passing yards a game. They're top 10 in rushing though, which is very important. A lot of those rushing yards coming in the fourth quarter from Jamal Charles and some scrambles from Alex Smith. But I believe Chris is right. This offense is incredibly inconsistent, and their red zone efficiency is dreadful. It's less than 50%. It's around 48.7, which is something that's unacceptable. It's not going to be okay. As I wrote, it's not going to be okay versus Denver. So in terms of the offense, a C is the best I can give them.
Yeah, and I'm actually I'm gonna be political. I'm gonna kind of fit mine right between the two of you. I'm gonna go with a C minus. I think that they've been just below average. They've had flashes of brilliance, against New York Giants. Alex Smith has a really good game, throwing 3 touchdowns. Against Cleveland, he's got a couple of touchdowns. But against Buffalo, they don't even find the end zone at all. Again, before, in Houston, Smith doesn't throw a touchdown. So I really got to think that, they really, really have some adjustments to make, and I hope that the extra week off and the extra week of prep will help. But, yeah, I got to give them a C minus with the hope that they're going to improve. Moving over to the defense, and I think that this one is damn near a no-brainer. But, Kenny, where do you got the defense ranked?
A minus, and I say an A minus because, in the first couple of games they were stellar, man. I mean, that Jacksonville game, they didn't allow a touchdown against the Giants. I thought that was going to be a lot closer, and it was close for a while. And they only gave up 7 to a team with, Eli Manning, Hakeem Nicks, and Victor Cruz. Oakland, Oakland scored 7, and they've only given up the most they've given up all year, 17, of the first team to do that in the first 9 games since the 1977 Falcons, and that's quite a long time ago. So, but the only reason.
By the way, that was the year I was born. So just so you know.
All right, we need to find a stat for 82 so we can all.
But going back to the reason that they are an A minus and not an A plus or an A is how they've been playing recently. And this defense is built to get to the quarterback, and that's what they did the start of the year. And they haven't been doing that. Their defenses look very lackluster over the past couple of games, which is why, aside from only giving up less than 17 points, which they've been doing, but in terms of getting to the quarterback and just in general, man, the defense is a lot of the times it's like the Chiefs of please get a stop here. And that's how it was for me in the past 2 games. So aside from, very recently, and it's kind of like, you're starting off the year great, A, and that, next thing you know, a C plus, a B minus out of nowhere. So that's what happened with the Chiefs in the last 2 games. So A minus for the Kansas City Chiefs defense so far.
Chris, where are you at?
Well, I disagree completely, really, with Kenny. I have them at an A plus. I think the only fair way to judge a team in a grading scale like this is to judge it against your peers. So if you're judging their defense against the rest of the NFL, there's not a defense that's doing anything like we're doing. We might not have, you look at the Bills game and you go, oh yeah, well, they got gashed for 160 rushing yards and this and that, but who cares? If you get gashed for 160 rushing yards and your defense scores 2 defensive touchdowns and wins you the game, then if you're judging strictly on defense, that's as A plus as it gets. I can't imagine a defense doing much better. I mean, like Kenny said, we're under 17 for everybody we've played against, which is the best in the NFL. We have the most defensive touchdowns. We have the most defensive turnovers. We have the most defensive sacks. If you're judging us amongst our peers, there's no one better, so you can't give anybody a better score than us.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And I mean, really, we're talking semantics, and Kenny's right. In some statistical categories, we've kind of dropped off the last couple of weeks. The defense has, but I was going to make the same exact point that you did, Chris. When you have a defense that scores 2 touchdowns in one game and they're the difference between winning and losing, I mean, I can't find fault in that, even though they didn't get to the quarterback, even if it is a rookie undrafted free agent quarterback who's never started a game in the NFL. This defense is doing things that defenses haven't done since it was 1985 and almost 1982. Since it was 1985 and a guy named Jim McMahon was wearing unauthorized headbands and they were making videos called the Super Bowl Shuffle. I mean, really and truly, there has not been a defense like this since that Chicago Bears defense in '85 when they went to the Super Bowl. And I'll stand by that and argue that fact with anybody. Kenny, you cited the stat 77. Falcons was the last defense to not allow a team through the first 9 games to score more than 17 points. I mean, the kind of stuff that they're doing this year is unheard of, and I'm a bit of a Kool-Aid drinker when it comes to the Chiefs. I'll buy anything that they want to sell me. Last year and the year before, I bought hey, Romeo Crennel is a defensive genius, and we got to believe in Romeo Crennel, and him being the head coach of the Chiefs is the best thing that could happen because he's got this defense where, yeah, they're going to give up some plays, but they're not going to allow touchdowns. Well, we all know what happened last year. We all drank the Kool-Aid, and we all had the little bit of cyanide that went along with it and ended up, in the Hale-Bopp Comet. Very obscure cult reference there. But my point being, this year, I think it's okay to drink the Kool-Aid on this defense, and so that's a long way of me saying A+ for the defense. So
yeah, the defense could not do another thing the whole entire year, and I would still have them in my graces. I mean, for what they've been able to do coming from last year, and then judging them amongst the other defenses in the NFL, the other defenses in the NFL that have had a great defensive games have been very inconsistent. Chiefs have been consistent. And in the areas that we have fallen off on here and there, like the last couple of games rushing the quarterback, our defense are the people scoring the points and putting it in. So, I mean, you can't fault that.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, special teams. Chris, where you got the special teams at?
Special teams I have is just a straight-up B. I think we've been very consistent. I think we've been doing a great job in coverage, which a lot of the time is overlooked. I think when people think special teams, a lot of the time they think, your return game. And our return game has been good. I think Demps and McCluster and, the people involved in that have been good, and they've been getting us, we've been winning the field, fight to get field position, I think, pretty much in all the games. But more importantly, I think we've had great coverage. We've really kind of seemed to lock everybody down. Our punting has been phenomenal. Colquitt's been pinning people all year, behind not even the 20, but behind the 10. And, just really giving us that field battle.
Yeah, I would agree. But before I kind of give mine, Kenny, where are you at on special teams?
Yeah, I'm close to that. I'm kind of gonna think my grade through as I go through my commentary. But Dustin Colquitt's the man, flat out. Him and Ryan Succopart. I mean, I'm a little biased because I played kicker and punter in high school and 1 year in college. But I love those guys, man, especially Dustin Colquitt. You don't get any better than him, and the coverage has been phenomenal all year. Yeah, Cooper stepped out of bounds and screwed up that punt on the 1 yard line. But then, look what he does, and he fights for that ball against the Tennessee Titans, and picks up not only Chiefs touchdown but 8 points for my fantasy team. So, so Marcus Cooper, I think not only has he been good on defense but on special teams. Ron Parker's also done a good job on coverage, and then obviously Dex's kick return against the Giants was phenomenal. Demps has done a pretty good job all year, but. I've always got to take, I'm a huge realist when it comes to the Chiefs. I like to drink the Chiefs Kool-Aid, but then, right as I'm about to take a sip, I'm like, well, wait a minute. So, and I love, I love this team, but there are times where I just, and I think I'm just like, well, why did they do that? Like, why did they let Niall Davis continue to run, let him return kicks sometimes? Yeah, I know he had that great kick return against the Steelers, but he also, he dropped the kickoff during the regular season. So I'm actually going to go exactly what Chris said as a B. So I think Suckup's done a great job, but overall, yeah, I think a little bit above average. So yep, B is about right.
I'm actually gonna disagree with you guys. I'm pretty high on the special teams unit. And I'll give my grade and then give my justification. I'm actually gonna go with a solid A, for the special teams. I think Suckup has been clutch. When you ask a kicker to come in and do as much as he's done, and he's missed a couple from outside of 50, but that's asking a lot of any kicker. And I think it's only 2 or 3 that he's missed all season. I don't have the stat sitting right in front of me.
Yeah, it's 3 now.
Okay, so three all season that he's missed, but his kicks have been the difference between winning and losing in a couple games. Not necessarily in a last-second type of situation, but he's one of those guys that, I don't worry. He's not Billy Cundiff. I don't worry about him shanking one and bouncing it off the left goalpost, when the game's on the line. Chris, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Quentin Demps has been solid. The guy, minus a kickoff here or there, I can't think of when he hasn't brought it out to the 30, 35-yard line. And that 15 yards is huge when you're talking about field position. And then, of course, Dexter with his punt return. Sometimes he takes a couple of chances I don't like him to take, but I would almost rather that he fair caught it and not took that hit because, he's such a little dude, but he's so explosive. So even though the Chiefs have only had one return for a touchdown, with McCluster taking the one to the house against the Giants, I'm going to give them a solid A. I think that they've done what a special teams unit is supposed to do and then some. So that's kind of where I stand with that. All right, as we move through here, Addicts, we're kind of breaking down our midseason grades, talking about the offense, the defense, and the special teams and grading those. And now one that I think is going to be quite controversial, offensive MVP. Kenny, who's your offensive MVP for the Chiefs thus far through the first 9 games?
That was a real good job, faking sarcasm, but not faking sarcasm, but faking sarcasm at the same time. If either of you guys doesn't say Jamaal Charles, I'm going to turn my computer off. Because without Jamaal Charles, this offense isn't an offense. Dwayne Bowe has been essentially non-existent. It's questioning whether I think he's even a top 20, 25 wide receiver at times, or maybe that's just Smith's fault. Alex Smith is Alex Smith, and Fasano's been hurt, and trying to think of other guys who could even be in this discussion. But there really isn't anyone who could be in this discussion. This is a guy he's third in the league in rushing. I'm almost positive he's still third in the league. Maybe that's changed since then. I haven't looked at the stats recently, but this guy literally is this team's offense. And without Jamaal Charles, I don't even need to explain this that much. Without Jamaal Charles, this isn't an offense. It's Alex Smith throwing the ball 3 yards and punting every 3 downs.
All right, Chris, you're up.
I already see the smirk in Jason's face about. I'm gonna take the reins from you, Jason, and Kenny might be turning off his computer, but I think you have to define what MVP is. I think when you say most valuable player to a team, obviously Jamaal Charles is our offense. He scores the touchdowns. He is able to do what he does because of the way our offense is. But okay, take last year's team. We had Jamaal Charles. Jamaal Charles had one of his best years ever last year, and we were still 2-14. So I think that something has changed, and yes, the defense is a big part of that. But I think you have to, even though I've been as critical as Alex Smith as anybody, but you almost have to give it to Alex Smith. You really have to.
You are totally stealing my thunder, killer.
I know. I knew it's where you were going, and it's gonna kill Kenny. I'm not you've been a Alex Smith cheerleader forever, and I like the guy, but I don't think he's like this amazing quarterback. But I think he's consistent. I think he doesn't turn the ball over. He allows us to manage games, and because of him doing that, it is the step stool to allowing Jamal Charles to do what he does. If Alex Smith doesn't do what he does, Jamal Charles doesn't get the chance to do what he does. Because we saw it last year. Jamal Charles can run the ball a bajillion times, and we don't win games. If we don't win games, it doesn't matter who the MVP is. So I think Alex Smith is that key to us being able to win some of these games with this defense and gets MVP.
I'm gonna go with Brandon Albert. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going with Brandon Albert.
Eric Fisher.
I would take Brandon Albert over Alex Smith. I would, if for everything.
But see, here's and Chris, and I swear Chris and I didn't set this up beforehand, but Chris hit the nail on the head. You take Jamal Charles, and believe me, Kenny, I'm a Jamal Charles fan, and well, by the time Addicts, you listen to this, my article on Charles and his stake in the MVP for the NFL, will be have posted, but we'll leave that for another time, but. You're absolutely right, and in that article, I talk about the fact that Charles has produced by himself almost 40% of the Chiefs' offense this year. Statistically speaking, he's got a third of the touchdowns, and he's got like almost 40% of the yardage. So I'm not disputing that whatsoever. But Chris hit the nail on the head. 1,500 yards on the ground last year. And the Chiefs are 2-14, and that's his second best season yardage-wise. So, what changes? Well, I'll tell you what changes. What changes is a quarterback who has only turned the ball over 4 times this year. That's what changes. You can call Alex Smith a game manager if you want. You can call him a captain checkdown. That's your term coined and trademarked by Kenny Sember, ladies and gentlemen.
No, it was checkdown McGee.
Oh, that's right. Checkdown McGee. That's what you called him. Checkdown. I like it. But the bottom line is, Alex Smith is doing what Alex Smith was brought here to do. You can't fault an orange for being an orange if that's what you were told, and that's what we were told Alex Smith was going to be, and that's what he's done. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. And I get it, and like I said, I'm not discounting your pick because I think that Jamal Charles has absolutely been MVP, and I think that he's MVP material for the NFL. If you want to know the truth, a team doesn't go from 2-14 to 9-0. Without something. So, all right, let's switch gears here before Kenny gets pissed and turns his computer off, and talk about the defensive MVP because I think we could all three.
I don't like oranges, Jason. I don't like oranges.
I think we could all pick. Go ahead, Chris.
More of a red apple guy.
Yeah, exactly. At least he's not a banana guy. I think we could all three pick a different defensive player and still get along. So I'm going to kind of kick this one off and say that I really think that the defensive MVP has been Tamba Hali thus far. Now I'm going to change my mind. No, I'm going to go with Tamba Hali. I think that he's really come on, but more so than his stats, the time that he has spent mentoring and bringing along Justin Houston is really kind of why I'm going to take Tamba over anybody else. The guy to me is truly a team player because he's not the guy that is going to sit at his locker and pout and complain the first 3-4 games when he's not getting to the quarterback. Houston is, because he's getting double teamed and held on every single play. Houston is the guy getting the sacks up front. Offenses are figuring out, hey, we got to take care of this number 50. Well, that's leaving number 91 one-on-one in a matchup on the other side now, and now he's getting his sacks. So I'm going to say Tamba Hali, just for his mentorship and his performance on the field, is the MVP thus far for the Chiefs on defense. Chris, who do you got?
And me and you didn't talk before this, but I have written down right here too, Tamba Hali, and it's solely because you have to realize that coming into this season, Tamba Hali was the defensive pass rusher on our team that people knew. And so at the start of the year, he was getting all the attention, getting double-teamed, still providing some good pressures, through the double team, but really allowed pressure to come on from the other side, and then then you got to see the defenses start to switch when you saw offense protection schemes have to go to Houston, and then Tamba Hali the second half had come on and really got a bunch of sacks. So, once they started single teaming him, he came back on hard. So I think Tamba Hali is kind of that boulder that everything else is kind of built around, and number one concern, I think, for most of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Kenny, are you going Hawley too? Or are we going to have a three-way tie here? Or you've got somebody else in mind?
No, sir. And this guy is a guy that, well, I'm easily the most pleasantly surprised by. And my defensive MVP goes to Marcus Cooper for the first 9 games of the year. I can't think of a more clutch guy than this year. I mean, the guy single-handedly pretty much sealed the game against the Titans by himself, not only with the fumble recovery, but with the interception. If not for stepping out of bounds, he would have downed opponent to 1, and that's more special teams. But the guy is locked down, good receiver after good receiver, week after week. He's got that build, and Kiko Alonso aside, I mean, if you're going top 3 finalists for Defensive Rookie of the Year midway through the season, there's no doubt in my mind Marcus Cooper is in that 3 finalists. The guy's just been, for a guy that was a 7th-round pick and cut by the San Francisco 49ers, the guy who originally played offense at a school in a conference where no one gives a crap, the Big East. No one cares about Big East football, unless you're a superstar. But Marcus Cooper was nowhere near a superstar, and he came out of Rutgers, and look what he is doing for this team. He is providing another big body. He is making it a lot harder for teams to go vertical. The guy, he locked down Hakeem Nicks, who I consider a top 10 wide receiver when he's got his game going. And he's just been invaluable to this team. I think that, he's, and I'm going to go back to my word, is clutch. He's come up with many clutch plays. He essentially sealed the Bills game with that strip. Yeah, he was right with T.J. Graham on that crossing route. He was not going to let T.J. Graham cut up the field and gain another 30 yards. But not only did he do that, not only was he in the position for the tackle, but he had the frame of mind to punch the ball out. And Tom Hawley ended up picking up and scoring for a touchdown. So my defensive MVP, as much as you'd like to give it to a guy, Tom Hawley, please, this defense is great. I was debating whether to give it to Eric Berry. Hawley, Houston's got 11 freaking sacks. Poe is a monster. Half this team is full of MVPs on defense. But for me personally, I got to go with Marcus Cooper.
So is he your top rookie pick too? I mean, he's got to be.
Oh, it's not even close. I mean, he's a guy that wasn't even drafted. And don't get me started on Eric Fisher. Don't get me started.
Yeah. Eric Fisher's my top rookie. No, I'm kidding. I got to go with Cooper. Chris, are you on that train too?
I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I thank you, San Francisco, for letting that guy go and trying to sneak him through waivers, because and thank you, John Dorsey, for having just the foresight to say, hey, this kid's going to be something special. But I don't think anybody knew what they were getting in a player like Marcus Cooper. I actually learned something today. Did you guys know that the very first college football game was Rutgers versus Princeton, like 170?
1866.
So not 1982. Damn, sorry, Chris, we tried.
Yeah.
Either 1866 or 1890.
Yeah, it's crazy. I just learned that today. So, pretty interesting. Back then, everybody gave a damn about Big East football because they were the only 2 teams. So, overall team grade.
1869.
1869. There you go. Overall team grade. The team is undefeated. Chris.
I don't think that undefeated is a fair way to just give somebody an A. I have us at a B-. I think that there's definitely, if we were just doing offense and special teams, then yeah, we're an A. Defense and special teams, we're an A. But our offense really needs to get a move on, and it matters really how you're wanting to judge the Chiefs. I mean, once again, if you're trying to do the big picture, everyone says, okay, we're 6-0, we're 7-0, we're 8-0. Hey, you can't, blame being undefeated. You can't say this and that. But if you're looking at the big picture, you've got to know it's not going to work against Denver. You know it's not going to work against the Colts. Us being able to play zero offense and hoping our defense comes through every time. There has to be I said it a couple weeks ago, and I'll say it again, that if Alex Smith can come out and generate 3 offensive touchdowns for our team, we're going to win anybody in the league. But he doesn't do that week in and week out. If he did, it would be a whole different story.
Kenny, where are you at?
I was debating doing a Pete Prisco impression, but I decided
not on this podcast, buddy.
No,
this is not a Pete
that. I was
Prisco
gonna do I was gonna do it really facetiously, like not agree with him, but it was. I'm not funny, but yeah, it's tough not to give the Chiefs are an A in my heart. I'll tell you that right now, man. It's been 9 weeks, and I haven't been and like they say on 610 Sports, man, when you get a win on Sunday, how easy is it to go to work on Monday? Like, how easy is it to just be like, yeah, I want to do my job. I mean, I'm probably not. I don't like it that much, but man, I'm not grumpy about like the Chiefs losing. I'm not grumpy about Matt Castle throwing 70 interceptions or fumbles all over the place. It's hard not to give this team an A, but at the same time, Chris hit the nail on the head. Man, this offense, and Andy Reid, when they played Jacksonville, they had good field position every time they scored a touchdown. They did what they had to do. When they played Dallas, they scored a bunch of touchdowns. They played Cleveland, they scored a couple touchdowns. But it's not enough. It's not enough. The offense needs to become more dynamic for this team to become an A. Because if you average out the offense and the defense, you get a B. However, I will give the Chiefs a B+ so far in 9 weeks. Winning solves everything, I promise. 9-0, it's fantastic. Best thing ever. But at the same time, if you're literally just grading them as a team, I got to go with the B+. The offense just isn't good enough.
Okay, and that's fair. But like you said, 9-0. I mean, I don't know. I'm with you guys, but like I said, I drink the Kool-Aid too. So we've talked a lot about this is kind of the midseason, coming through the wall. We've talked about this is kind of the mid-season point for the Chiefs, getting their bye after week 9. So as we move forward and we look ahead at what's next, and it's kind of a offensively speaking, the Chiefs are about to face their toughest part of their schedule. Obviously, the Chiefs are back in action at 8:30 Eastern Time, 7:30 Central, and 5:30 Pacific against the Broncos, being flexed to Sunday Night Football. That's in Denver. Back home in Kansas City against the San Diego Superchargers. And then at home again against the Broncos. So Peyton Manning and his band of merry men twice in 3 weeks. Then they're on the road in Maryland against the Redskins, and then on the road to the Black Hole against the Raiders. Back home for the Colts, and then they finish out the season in sunny San Diego against the Chargers. So definitely when you're talking about offense, you're talking Peyton Manning's offense, obviously high-powered and potent. You're talking about Phillip Rivers' offense with the Chargers, high-powered and potent. You're talking about RG3, and don't let that team fool you. You have a high-powered, potent offense, and then you're talking about the Colts, who have a high-powered offense. Of the remaining games, the 7 remaining games, you're talking about 6 of those games that are going to be, nail biters and barn burners.
Opposed to these other games that haven't been nail biters.
Yeah, right. I think he means that. I think what Jason's trying to say is that going into these games, we were a little bit more comfortable that the Chiefs had the upper hand. Going into these next couple games, I'm not comfortable that the Chiefs have the upper hand. Against San Diego at home, definitely more comfortable. I think that the Colts are going to be a tough game, but currently the home situation is great. And here's the best thing about the Chiefs right now: they are 9-0. They're not 8-1. They're not 7-2. They're not 6-3. They're not 5-4. They are 9-0. They are 1 win away from 10. They are 2 wins away from 11. And I could keep going. But in terms of their final schedule, and I can, I guess we're going to talk about playoffs in a little bit. But in these last couple games, if the Chiefs are as good as they are, there's no reason they can't, at the very least, split with Denver and San Diego, beat Oakland, beat Indianapolis and Washington. I mean, Washington's on the road, so I'll say they lose to Washington. But there's no reason that this team can't split with both San Diego and Denver, beat Oakland, and beat Indianapolis. And that's 4 wins right there. So that's 13. There's no reason.
No, I mean, and Chris, go ahead. You look like you were ready to jump in.
I just found it interesting that you thought they were going to lose to Washington and win Indianapolis.
Well, I mean,
this team at home. This team at home, man. Danny Parkins has said it multiple times. If the Chiefs can somehow find a way to win this division and get that 1 seed, somehow, they're going. They're going all the way.
And I'm inclined to agree with that, and I think that thus far it hasn't mattered on the road or at home. They've obviously won them all, but having stood in Arrowhead for the first time in my life this season, there's something magical about it. I'm not going to lie. There's something magical about it, and I'm inclined to, being the ever-loving Kool-Aid drinker that I am, I'm inclined to believe that if they can get that home field advantage throughout, that that would make the difference. And Kenny, you hit the nail. They have to go, if they go 4-3 down the stretch.
That's okay. That is so okay with me.
13. That's ending 13-3. That's if they go 4-3.
Yeah.
As far as the 2 games against Denver's about to face the toughest defense that they faced all year. Hands down, we said it. The Chiefs have the best defense in the NFL. Same with San Diego. San Diego's about to face the toughest defense that they faced, and San Diego's struggled. San Diego's a very inconsistent team. So, and you talk about the playoff implications and the playoff picture. Right now, if the season ends tomorrow, which it doesn't, but if it did, the road to the Super Bowl goes through Kansas City.
Number 1.
That's the Chiefs are the number 1 seed in the NFL. In the NFL, not just the AFC.
Yes, sir.
Denver's a game back, and as we kind of talk about this, they've got San Diego on Sunday, and I'll tell you what, and here's I always promise my wife I'll mention her once every show, and here's my mention of my wife, Chris.
She said I can't mention her anymore at all.
Well, that's because you called her out, but I'm going to call her out. She and I this weekend, we are the biggest Phillip Rivers San Diego Supercharger fans you've ever met in your life. I would love Phillip Rivers to light Denver up, because Denver's defense sucks, and if anybody can beat them right now, and beat them in a shootout, I think it's Rivers and the Chargers. What's your take on that, Chris? What do you think? I'm hoping for San Diego win.
I'm playing Eddie Royal in my fantasy team. I think I'm the same way. I think San Diego does have a high power offense. I think they kind of lack a little bit in the running game, but I don't think there's going to be much running involved. I think it's going to be something similar, probably not as spectacular as the Dallas game. It's going to be just a bunch of passing, a lot of probably high-scoring game, and who knows? With those Chargers, I've said it a handful of times on the show. They're very streaky. They always are. If you get them, I'm pending the Chiefs playing them, depending on how they're kind of playing when we play them. If they're coming off a loss and playing really bad, then I think we win. If they're playing off a high note, we're probably going to lose to them. So, I think that they definitely have the ability to beat somebody like Denver. And then, about these division games, they're always lightning in a bottle waiting to happen. So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Kenny, who do you got? Who do you think? Denver, San Diego?
Is this game in Denver or San Diego?
It's in San Diego.
I'm with you. I'm rooting for San Diego all the way. I can't stand Philip Rivers, man.
Oh, well, me neither.
But I'll tell you what. When they stole Keenan Allen was a first round prospect. No doubt in my mind, he was a first round prospect when I was looking at him. I'm a little bit of a draft junkie, just a little bit. But you know, I knew he was going to be good coming off that injury, and look how good he is. He's their number one guy. Vincent Jackson, they don't miss him. They don't miss him at all. And Vincent Jackson's on the team that hasn't won yet. So you look at the San Diego Chargers and how they'll fare against the Denver Broncos. I mean, it's a we'll see. It's a big we'll see. Denver is just, and that defense, I can't say that they suck. They don't. The defense doesn't suck. And it's not good. It's not the Chiefs, but it doesn't suck. Chris Harris is very underrated.
It's in the bottom quarter of the league. I mean, how do you say they don't suck?
I can't.
They're terrible.
They're horrible.
They have no pass defense whatsoever.
Their pass defense is bad. Yes, that's true. But their run defense is number 3 in football.
No.
But you understand why it's number 3? Because nobody's running on them.
Yeah,
nobody's running on them. They're all down 21 points in the first quarter, and they can't afford to run the ball.
I understand
that.
That's the fakest. Yeah, that's such a skewed stat.
It is skewed, and that's also the reason when I got into arguments with those trolling Broncos fans is why is Denver's defense so bad? Is because teams are playing catch up. They're throwing the ball. They're putting points on the board because Denver's always blowing them out. But from what I saw against Dallas, their defense looked terrible, but they were also missing 6 out of 11 starters. If you put it, I think personally, this is my personal opinion, if you put a healthy Denver defense out there, and this is this is Champ Bailey, Wesley Woodyard, Von Miller's out there. I think it's a completely different defense.
Yeah,
however,
but that's the thing though. They're not healthy. So I mean,
exactly.
You can't.
No, that's where I was going to go, Chris. That's exactly where I was going to go. So I think that you're right. I think this could have the makings of a shootout, but it's hard to pick against Denver. I swear I'm going to be that's the one game I'm watching this weekend. That's a 4 Eastern game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the late afternoon game.
Oh, all right.
Just real quick on the defense, if
the
Ravens hung 27, the Giants hung 23, the Raiders hung 21, the Eagles hung 20, Cowboys 48, the Jags hung 19. I don't think the Jags have scored 19 all season.
Yeah, that was the game that really kind of
the Colts hung 39, and then the Redskins hung 3 touchdowns on them. Their defense is terrible. It's garbage, and it'll get exposed again this weekend. I think it's going to be another barn burner. I think it's going to be another 40+ for either team. It'll be one of those who's got the ball last and who makes the most mistakes. So real quick, let's take a look at these ESPN Power Rankings. Obviously, the Chiefs sit atop once again in the number 1 position. They actually dropped the Broncos down to number 3 behind the Colts, which I thought a pretty bold move, even though the Colts beat the Broncos. ESPN is kind of the trailblazer on this, and leading the charge in the not anti-Denver, but kind of saying that, hey, it is what it is. The Colts beat them, even though Denver's got the better record. The Colts are ahead of them. The Chargers, again, being as streaky as they are, they're up, they're down. They're sitting at 4-4, and again, that playoff picture. But if you want to talk about a division where 3 teams from one division can make the playoffs, it's the AFC West this year. And looking at the Chargers, Chiefs, and Broncos all being playoff contenders. So very, very interesting. The Chiefs don't have to worry about it this weekend. Addicts don't have to worry about it this weekend as the Chiefs are off. So their undefeated record is safe for yet another week. So that's going to kind of wrap that up as far as that goes. Kenny, we'll shoot it over to New York. And what are your final thoughts on the Chiefs bye week?
They gotta do something. They gotta do something about this offense. I don't care. They gotta put Alex Smith in some kind of simulator where it's not possible for him to throw a pick. Just do that and have him throw the ball 20+ yards down the field. I don't care. They need to create more dynamic plays. They try to reverse this weekend against Buffalo. The reverse is, something that if it's set up right, if things go right, it's a big play. -6, -7 yard loss against Buffalo. They need to do something. I mean, Denver is going to be keying on Jamal all game. So whatever Reed and Smith has to do, and especially whatever Sutton's got to do to, vamp up this, to get the defense, to get to Peyton Manning, that's what they got to do. Big plays, get to Peyton, stop the run. That was, I had to get to Peyton because my third one in my article was red zone efficiency. But those are the three things that I want to see them do over this bye week.
Chris, final thoughts on the Chiefs bye week?
Hopefully, like I said, it's cleaning stuff up. You kind of usually hope for your bye week to be a good time for your guys to get healthy, but I think one of the reasons we've been so meticulous and so on point this season is winning or non-winning seasons. This is the healthiest we've been for years and years and years. I mean, we've got to be the healthiest team in the NFL. I mean, there's not been a lot of stuff we've missed, so that's been a blessing. And I think it's a good time for us to sit down and spend a few weeks just focusing on how we're going to stop high-powered passing offense. Sutton's a smart guy. We have a lot of talent. I think it allows us time. I think our bye couldn't have come at a better time. I think splitting this part of the season off from the first part of the season is a huge split. I mean, if I was to pick a spot where there was a huge split in the season, I think it would be this week exactly. So, I mean, it's a great time for us to go in. I mean, we're going to have 3 heavy offensive games right in a row with Denver, San Diego, Denver. So I think that gives us a chance to really focus on some of that and trying to find the best way to stop that.
Yeah, and I agree with both you guys. Chris, your point that the bye could not have come at a better time. Obviously, after 9 games, and I think that might have a little bit to do with some of the defensive drop off in the sacks, and that is, the guys are tired. I mean, 9 games in a row. You look at the schedule that these guys are keeping and the tempo that they have to maintain, and they're smoked. I mean, that's it. So being able to kind of relax mentally and physically, I think is going to do them all well. Obviously, coming right before the Denver, I mean, nobody, and I don't care who you are, because if you knew that this was coming, you went to Vegas and you put $5,000 down on the Chiefs being 9-0 after 9 games, and now you're a multimillionaire. But for the rest of us, nobody knew this was coming. And so, but the fact that the bye comes before the Denver game, when we're essentially, assuming Denver wins this weekend, it's essentially a battle for the number 1 seed in the AFC. Nobody could have planned this better. A Hollywood script writer couldn't have written this better. The showdown at Mile High. So, yeah, I mean, that's I think you guys both summed it up perfectly. They need to kind of reflect. They've got to come up with something, and maybe they've got the plan. I mean, maybe they're going to come out and fool us all, and Smith's going to blow up for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. We'll see. So, but more on that next week, Addicts, as we kind of break down the matchup against Denver as we roll through the bye week. Addicts, thanks for listening. Real quick, you can find us on iTunes. You can find us, obviously, at arrowheadaddict.com/AA radio is where we'll post everything. The video on YouTube, you can watch our past episodes and listen to our past episodes on AA radio, arrowheadaddict.com, AA radio. I'd like to thank Kenny and Chris on the panel for being here with us tonight, talking Chiefs football. It's been great. It's been a pleasure. I always like to discuss football as much as I like to argue it. So I definitely enjoyed the conversation, fellas. And so for Kenny up in New York, Chris over in Spokane, Washington, I'm Jason Seibel. Keep it red, keep it yellow, keep it cheese.
See y'all just Indians and we the Chiefs. Red and yellow, red.